Gerry, Don, great to have you both here in studio with us. Two familiar faces for sure. Don, let's start with you. Can you tell us what the Gotland tour, comedy tour, is all about?
Gotland, it's a tour, maybe it's more of a movement. I'm not sure. It's Janelle Niles, who's Mi'kmaq. She's based in Ottawa. That's how I know her. I'm in the nation's capital. And she started just doing these all Indigenous shows. And it started in Ottawa, but then she's branched out and she's really helping coalesce a lot of Indigenous comedy scenes. You know, when Gerry and I started, we're OGs, right? Which I think means old geezers, as the kids say. There weren't that many Indigenous comedians that I knew about, and now there's like almost, you know, you can do a show in every town across Canada with just Indigenous comedians. So with Gotland, she's really doing these shows in different parts, and she's got one now at the Winnipeg Comedy Festival.
Yeah. Gerry, as an OG, can you tell us how you've seen, you know, the whole scene change over the years?
Well, we were discussing that on the way over to the studios today, and when I first started out in comedy, there were like 5 comedians that were Indigenous. Don Kelly was one, Howie Miller, Don Dumont was a comic, of course Charlie Hill, and
Don Bernstick was out there.
Not when I started.
Not when you started?
Not when I started. That's how old I am, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
So
my elder.
Yeah, and Winston Wetney and Joe Moccasin Joe, and those were the go-to guys. And that you know, I was watching, and then my act kind of developed, and then I kind of started to develop, and then Don Bernstick, of course, came along. So, but it's wonderful to be on Gotland. I've been watching them on the internet and seeing, you know, all the shows that they're booking, and all the youth. The young comics that are coming up. The kids! That's what I got. You kids! Keep the jokes coming!
You know, Don, like Gerry's saying, there was a handful of people back then. What changed, do you think? What's led to seeing so many of this resurgence?
You know, I think early on, well, first of all, a lot of the ones Gerry mentioned weren't even doing clubs either. Gerry I would see, Howie Miller, because we were doing clubs. Some of them were doing more than just the conference circuit. So even then, you wouldn't see that many.
But Charlie Hill was already doing late night talk shows.
Well, he was the one guy. Yeah. You know, if there's a creation story for Indigenous comedy, it's Charlie Hill right
God
there. Yeah, he's the Indigenous is about being first. He was the first. So there you go. But yeah, I think just sort of, you know, I mean, at the time, it wasn't really something that was on the radar for a lot of young Indigenous people. They were going to law school to learn how to take back our rights and fight for our rights, education, health, you name it. And then we got more actors, we got more performers, and then more people, I think, just started realizing, you know, performing arts is a really good way for us to be creative. We've got that oral tradition, we're storytellers, so I think there's really something that sort of, tweaked the interest, and then as more Indigenous people started doing it, it just started snowballing.
Right.
Which is terrible because snowballs are white. Bad metaphor, I'm sorry.
Well, that's the thing. I'm a 60 Scoop survivor, and I believe you are as well?
No.
He didn't survive the 60 Scoop, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm tragically grew up with my mother and father.
Oh my God. But I used humor as a defensive mechanism when I was growing up in public school, and even in college, if you can imagine that. People would tease me all the time, and you know, I've been in my fair share of scraps. And but yeah, so developing my humor to you know, fend off the bullies in school kind of is what got me going. So I'm basically a smart ass from the word go, you know.
Don, you know, when people think of Gotland or the land bag movement itself, it's kind of a serious thing. Are we going to be, how do we turn this all into comedy, I guess?
Well, you know, you're walking a balancing act, but comedy is general, whether it's Indigenous or not. It's a cycle of tension and release, and that's where the laughter comes from. And I think a lot of our Indigenous comedians are very skilled at finding that balance. And, you know, at the same time, some of it's just silly. Not all of it is about the issues, because we do, you know, we go and we shop or we have relationships, you name it. So, I mean, it's not all just about the hardcore issues. But I do find comedy is such a powerful way to get people thinking about the issues, because someone who won't go to a lecture on Indigenous issues or won't go to a documentary about it might go to a comedy club. So you've got this captive audience, and you can kind of play with that a little bit and make a few points, sneak them in. And so I think in that sense it's really powerful, and it is a way to get, you know, if they laugh, they got the joke, which means they got the point. So I think that's, again, it's a really good way to get people thinking about things. But hey, it's not all a lecture. You're going to have a lot of fun if you come to the shows.
Yeah, well, for sure. I know I was mentored by some of the greatest stand-ups in Canada, Ron James, Brent Butt, Derek Edwards, and their advice to me was, okay, we understand what you're trying to do with your humor, but you got to get the audience on your side first. So step up, do some generic jokes, get the audience to like you, warm up to you, and once they find that is, then jump at them, then start with the political stuff. So, I take their advice to heart as well.
Indeed. Gerry, Don, we'll leave it there, but it sounds like a great weekend. Hopefully it'll be more than just one weekend, and all the best this weekend as things play out.
Yeah, I hope to see you there.
Yeah, it's not gonna. I'm off to KFC now, so everybody could join me.
It's just a fried chicken just across the street.
Gerry Barrett, hard hitting on the issues, ladies and gentlemen.